We know that right now Mauro Biello has named his preliminary roster, about 50 plus players on that. So we always know that typically is a big roster that is named. But I'll start with you, Ollie. What are some of Biello's toughest decisions, do you think, when it comes to the roster?
Well, I actually don't think there'll be that many. This is a one-game window. You've just got to get the result you need in this game, and I think he'll stick with a very familiar team as a result of that. You could probably pick 9 or 10 of the starting 11 now, injury dependent. So I don't think there'll be a ton of really difficult decisions. Where I think, they always crop up is in defense and in goal. That's where he's going to have a few choices to make, I think. Sam Adekubi, Vanni Sartini, I believe, said a day or two ago that he's still a month away, so I wouldn't expect to see him for this game. That's a blow. But particularly, obviously you have a bit of depth at fullback with Larea able to play on the left. Davies could play there. I think centre-back is the one where, assessing who are the best options to come into this squad is tricky, because I think Biello, maybe partially out of necessity because Vitória struggles to play 2 games in quick succession. He tried Cornelius and Miller in that second leg against Jamaica, left Vitória out. They conceded 3 goals in the second half, and we know the disaster that occurred there. So as much as there's this desire, I think, among a lot of fans to see younger defenders come in and get a chance, I still personally feel Steven Vitória is their best centre-back, and I'm not sure that there's an obvious replacement to come in and take his place right now. So on that basis, like I said, I still think that's the area of the team where there's room for some debate. But I kind of expect the incumbents that we've got used to over the past 2 or 3 years to continue in this game.
Jordan, where are you with that tough roster decision?
Yeah, it is only at center back. I think you could basically pick the team. Ollie's right with I would say 9 or 10 for sure. But the center back partnership with Kamal Miller and Derek Cornelius, both of them are talented. But I think playing Jamaica at BMO, having 2 left-footed center backs, not really one that was more assertive or a leader, I would say, in the spine of the team in the back 4 or back 3, however you want to look at it, really kind of cost them. I wouldn't say it's on one position. Like, obviously a team, when you leak goals, it's also how you're playing and the mood and the tempo of the game. But is there a better center back in a 3 than Steven Vitória, who's 37, that plays in the middle? I'm not sure. I think he's the one. Like, until everyone wants to say, yeah, bring in new blood, but there has to be someone that is undoubtedly better than someone that you have in the spot that you're used to playing. I don't think there's someone better than Steven Vitória. I would guess and back and put my little money that I have in my piggy bank that he would be playing down the middle, because there's just no other option in a must-win game that is better than him, and he's offered so much for Canada. So for now, until there's someone better, Steven Vitória would be my guy, and I think that allows other people like Kamal Miller, Alistair Johnson, to just really play in their role and not have to cover. It's familiar. It's what they know. I think they can get the job done with that back 3.
Wheels?
I think the outfield players in the starting 11 picks themselves right now based upon some injuries and who's been playing regular European football and who hasn't. Like, if it's anything but a Johnston, Vitória, Miller, Larea back 4, I would be absolutely shocked. Like, I'd be shocked. Your midfield 4, Buchanan, Eustachio, Kone, Davies, Laren, David up top. I think there is legitimate debate about the goalkeeper, whether it's time to move on from Milan Borjan with other options waiting in the wings, namely Sinclair, Crepeau, Sirwa right in the mix. I put those 3 players. I think that one of them deserves a chance to take this team forward. I know that this is a one-off game, but I think sometimes you need to be able to change the mindset from the way that it ended so disappointingly in November, and that would certainly send a message. I look at the Canada team in that second leg against Jamaica, and the way that Biello utilized his bench was problematic for me, especially in a game where you might need to go out and get a goal. There just wasn't enough established strikers available to come off the bench. He ended up putting on midfielders or wide players when he needed someone to put them back in the net. That's why for me, just in terms of depth, you need players that can score. Ike Ugba, Lucas Cavallini are in my squad. Like, I am putting them in right away. You need players to score goals. And at central midfield, I think there's an argument that you might have better options now than a Mark Anthony Kaye, a Sammy Piette. I think that Chouanier has to be part of the squad. When you add the depth of Osorio, And some, maybe you want to look at some younger players. Simon Collins has been playing very well. I know it's the second division of Dutch football. I mean, his numbers are good. Like, is it time to bring in some new blood? Liam Fraser's back in Major League Soccer. He plays a very different role than some of those other midfielders, a distributor. And I think that at times Canada needs to be able to keep their foot on the ball. And just to build off the defense, just in terms of depth, you have Cornelius, McGraw, Lucas McNaughton, or Joel Waterman could be in that mix. And I think there's a case with things a little bit more thin in the wingback positions. Ryan Raposo has been working his way into that mix as well. So I do think there's some conversations about what the team will, the larger squad will look like. But if you're Biello and company, the starting 11, you could, I wouldn't put pen to paper quite yet, but you're pretty close to knowing what that is. And you need to work through the variables, the game processes, what this might actually look like and who you might need in certain moments. And for me, there's certain players that jump off the page that can be absolutely required. And some of them that they've been naming to the squad that I'm not sure that they're fit for the purpose, the agenda that they're trying to achieve here.
I'll just come right back to you because you mentioned his name wheels. How concerned are you that Stefan Eustáquio, who is such a huge part of this national team, is not getting those starting minutes with Porto, and in fact is getting very limited minutes? Even their most recent Champions League game came on like right near the end. I mean, are you concerned about that?
I'm not, because playing a one-off for Canada. By the way, Eustáquio's played a lot of football over the last year. A lot. Yeah. And he was starting to look a little bit leggy. And I think that it perhaps had an effect on his performance for his club. He's playing for a club in Porto, which is an excellent club with tradition of success, a team that's going toe to toe with Arsenal in the Champions League. There is competition for these spots. I know that we're all big fans of what Eustáquio brings to the Canadian men's national team, but there's very good players playing ahead of him in that Porto side as well. So sometimes it's not what the player is or is not doing. It's just the context of that situation. And Porto has some very good midfield players. So that doesn't concern me. I want him fresh, quite frankly, for this one-off game coming up in March. So I'm, big picture, I think he's absolutely going to be fine. And over the short term, perhaps some rest will do him well.
All right. Let me ask you this. Speaking of just players right now, as we single them out, Ollie, we know about the Alphonso Davies news. By the way, it looks like he could be getting back in the lineup with Bayern this week. So once again, maybe a player who hasn't played, just kind of where are you maybe with Alphonso Davies' health, but also with all this news about Real Madrid, do you think he'll be a little distracted? Where are you with Alphonso Davies?
Not concerned about Davies, not concerned about Eustáquio. Just to touch on Eustáquio quickly, this is life at a big club. You sometimes come in and out of the team. They're not having a great league campaign, Porto as well, which I think incites the desire to maybe change things somewhat, as well as much as it's going better in the Champions League. And with Davies, again, this is a one-off game against Trinidad. Canada's top guys. I just don't have a high level of concern with those players, regardless of really their club form coming into these games.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Jonathan David, this is somebody who is scoring. He is, once again, sometimes he has a little bit of a slow start, guys, but we see this a lot of times, even with strikers. Sometimes they all just, typically will score in bunches and they get their touch back again. 11 goals with 2 assists and 23 league games. Ollie, how are you feeling about him and his performance and coming into camp looking good?
I'm feeling very good about him. I'm going to completely drain the audience here with some expected goals talk. But I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant with Jonathan David because you can look at his season and say, maybe he's not having, obviously he's been in great form lately, but he's probably not going to get the same number of goals as he scored last season. He got 24 last season. He's on 11 right now in the league for Lille. But if you look at his underlying numbers, I think he's made a jump. I think something has changed here, and there's been real improvement in Jonathan David's game. Because last season, the big driver of that goal total was penalties, frankly. His goals when he took the penalties out were pretty much similar to his first 2 seasons at Lille. This season, and I won't say the specific stats out loud because I'm just going to completely lose people I know here. But if you look at his expected goal numbers, taking out the penalty kicks, there is a massive, massive jump this year that just didn't happen in his first 3 years at Lille. And he's actually top of Ligue 1 in that statistic, even ahead of Kylian Mbappe. So even though the total goals may not be as high as it ended up last season, I think when you look at the underlying stuff, there's real reason to believe that Jonathan David has taken a big step forward this season after a really slow start. And maybe that could, allow him to take the next step in his career in the not too distant future here in terms of the club he's playing for.
Success, Ollie. You kept us awake. Jordan, as
I
we
don't know about
wrap
that.
up the men's national team, how about the CPL players who were named to Mauro Biello's preliminary roster? You have Joel Waterman, Jonathan Sirois, either current or former, I should say, CPL players. Joel Waterman, Jonathan Sirois, Dominic Zator, Lucas McNaughton, James Pantemis, Victor Latourie, and Diadine Abzi. Who do you think actually has the best chance of cracking the roster, though?
I mean, you told me when I started this business and joined the dark side, which is the best side in media, to be objective and not be biased. The good side, like dark side, but like the good side. Don't look at it that way. Don't read too much into it, Wheels. Okay, yeah. It's just a term. But obviously, I'm rooting for Dominic Zator because I think that his game has developed. Just speaking with him a lot and just him playing right back over in Poland. For Corona Kielce. I think that this is probably the weaker part of his game is like playing the ball forward, but in terms of defending, how strong he is, how he rarely gets beat. Would just love to kind of see him in the mix. And in the mix for me would be making the roster, maybe getting some burn and some time. But it'd just be nice. Also, when I'm looking at it, I don't think we'll crack the roster just because of Sam Adekubi and Alphonso Davies playing on the left side of the spot. But Diadine Abzi has to be one of the talented players, one of the most talented players I've ever shared a pitch with and shared a jersey with. If this guy could like be around in the mix, I know it's tough because of where he plays, but it'd just be nice to maybe see him in the future. But again, I say it once, I'll say it again. The CPL is that platform that can catapult a career, and we see it. In year 6, look at all these names that have played in the league. And honestly, there isn't much of a step down when you look at the players that play for the national team, when they go to their clubs, and other players that are big stars for the Canadian national team. They're right in the mix. So it's beautiful to see.
All right. Well, we'll see when he ends up naming that, getting ready for that March 23rd game.